Hello and welcome back to Lorehammer. I'm your host, Mark, for this exciting episode of another Primarch. We're going to learn, how did your daddy issues affect which Primarch you like? That's the name of the game today. Welcome, Gerald, to the show.
The horrors persist, and so do I. So I'm going to make it everyone else's problem.
Nice. Perfect.
As you well should.
Yeah, we also got Nemo joining. Hey,
Sorry for your loss.
that'll happen. 9 times out of 10, that'll happen every time. So today we are doing a Primarch episode. Perturabo, the leader of the Iron Warriors. It's going to be a fun episode. I've always enjoyed him. I've never really read too much of his books. Oh, look at that mini up on the screen. Yeah, Gerald's showing his Perturabo mini, and it's beautifully painted. Well done. I haven't really read any of the Perturabo stuff of the novels and stuff, but I've always liked him as a character. I kind of found him to be one of the more believable characters almost. Some characters seem like, how are you a super soldier? You're so petulant, But I like Perturabo. We'll get to him later. But before we get to that episode and all we're going to talk about, we'll just do some quick housekeeping. Merlin Miniatures is sponsoring this episode. So the Perturabo episode is brought to you by Merlin Miniatures. They are a miniature shipping website. So they will ship you Games Workshop minis, Lord of the Rings minis. They got all types of minis. They got over 20,000 items in stock, and they will ship worldwide to you. And when you sign up on their mailing list, you get 15% off. So here's the thing. When you're listening to this episode, you're going to be like, shit, I want Perturabo. I need 15 Perturabos to paint for some reason. So then you go to Merlin Minis, and you buy 15 Perturabos off them using promo code LOREHAMMER. That way, you help support some people. You help support me. It's a good win-win-win everywhere around. And I know you're going to be buying those minis. So just buy from Merlin Minis.
It's good sales because in Universe, nobody would ask for 15 birdies.
Yeah. There are links in the description below for that for Merlin Miniatures. So definitely go check that out. They are sponsoring this episode. We're super thankful for that. So we also have a Discord. In a way, those people also sponsor the episode by getting involved, join the Patreon, all that kind of fun stuff. We gave away some tabletop simulator games the other day, and I think now we're almost ready to do a big old tabletop simulator tournament. So definitely go join the Discord and see what we're up to on there.
Awesome. And while you're joining us on the Discord for all kinds of chicanery, consider joining the Imperial Tide because God Emperor Mark wants you, specifically, liar, to join.
Don't be a liar.
So we have a couple of tiers. Yeah, so we have a couple of tiers. It's $2.50, like not even the price of a McDonald's fry. No thanks to all the tariffs and the imports. Anyways, it's hunker down, everybody. So yeah, $2.50. You get ad-free versions on Patreon. Or sorry, my mind is everywhere tonight. You get ad-free Spotify. $5 gets you ad-free versions of the live stream. And on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Nemo.
For those of you that are joining us right now, you may or may not already know. But those of you who aren't may not know that we have a live stream. It's a very fun live stream. I started by shitposting the chat really, really hard. And now that I'm here every Wednesday, I am still shitposting the chat really,
Look
really
at you
hard.
now.
Oh, yeah.
A rags to riches story, just like that.
I don't know if I'd go that far.
That's definitely, I hear all the time, how do I get on the show? That's definitely how. You go join the live stream chat. You go start chatting there. You do a call in, and all of a sudden, you too can be like Nemo.
Have a sense of humor that's worse than mine. It's not hard.
Yeah.
It's impressive, but it's not hard.
Cool. Well, let's get into Perturabo. In today's episode, we're going to be starting with his history and his origins, his home planet. We're going to be talking about the Great Crusade, and then we're going to end right at the Horus Heresy, because who knows what happens? Spoilers, TM. And then we'll talk a little bit about his personality and his war gear kind of up to that point. So it's going to be a pretty fun episode to kind of get through. What is your guys' kind of one-sentence teaser for Perturabo?
I am angry, and you must know.
Ah, but not like mad, like angron. Like it's a different type of angry. It's like
It's
not.
like it's like kosher salt as opposed to regular salt.
Yes, yes,
Mm.
yes, exactly.
Whipping out the fancy stuff now, are we?
You
It's
got
a
to be a real
fancier
connoisseur to
type of
tell the
anger.
difference.
Okay,
Definitely,
But
okay.
definitely.
Perturabo sort will tell you there's a difference.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Perturabo is not mere salt. He is coffee beans. Coffee beans so dark and bitter that French roast is considered light. That is my one sentence teaser.
To
Okay,
be fair,
okay,
the
I
French
like
are
that.
quite light.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no,
But
that's nice. It's just a bitter dark roast, eh? Fuck them.
Mm-hmm.
but not like
Absolutely.
spelled Light, spelled Lyt. You can't even get the real spelling of light. That's how light it is.
Cool. Well, yeah, let's dive into Perturabo. Why are you guys making fun of him? I'm gonna defend my boy this whole time, I think. And already we're taking sides here
Oh,
of the
oh,
Perturabo
don't
heresy.
don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. He definitely has a lot going against him, and I feel for that. But my issue is he is such a petulant man-child about it, and we'll find out why.
I'm just gonna yell for the Emperor at the top of my lungs, but as to why is up to anybody's interpretation.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Someone still thinks we're on
Perturabo.
the Emperor's Children episode.
I've been actually reading them a lot in my Horus Heresy readings, and the more I read them, the more I love to hate them and hate to love them.
Perturabo, the Lord of Iron, the Breaker, and the Hammer of Olympia, was the Primarch of the Iron Warriors, the 4th Legion of the Emperor's Space Marines. And being forged in the crucible of Olympia's ruthless courts, he mastered both the calculus of war and the precision of technological arcana. Cold logic and unsparing mathematics dictated his every decision. His sword and bolter were mere extensions of his will, instruments no different than the relentless siege engines that ground his enemies to dust.
So that already sounds a lot like a Primarch. Oh, come on. There we go. That already sounds a lot like a Primarch we already know about. That sounds like an Ultra Smurf. Gilliman had the same start.
Yeah, that's very early to say all of a sudden just because they're both masters of war. But I don't even think Gilliman's a master of war. He's just more a master of logistics. Let's carry on before we get too crazy comparing him to another Primarch.
All right, all right. I mean, I got stuff for it, but all right.
I mean, if
Yeah,
we're going to
yeah.
compare him to a Primarch, it has to be Papa Dorn. So,
I'd
Yeah,
compare
I
him.
yeah.
mean, come on. Even the Emperor does it.
Yeah, exactly. There's better comparisons, but I think we need to get a little deeper before we start name dropping people.
I got a conspiracy that Gilliman could have been Perturabo.
Oh God, we're all one bad day away from becoming Perturabo. Really, it's fine. A fortress unto himself, Perturabo was taciturn to the point of insult. His silence a fortress against the betrayal he saw in all things. He was not beloved, nor did he seek friendship. To wage war was his purpose, and he did so with ruthless efficiency, grinding entire worlds beneath the inexorable weight of his stratagems. His victories were absolute, his word unbreakable like iron, yet for all his conquests, the Imperium regarded him with indifference, its laurels reserved for those whose wars left ruins less thorough. Unlike his brothers, many of whom waged war the Great Crusade with blind fervor, Perturabo did not drape himself in the illusions of glory. The expansion of the Imperium was duty, nothing more. The countless worlds he subdued were reduced to shattered husks. Their submission in fire and bought in fire and blood, and yet no thanks came, no recognition. Okay, so we're starting to see a little bit of the bitterness pick up and take, the little sprinkling of the coffee grounds over Perturabo started at a very early spot, eh? Not
Oh,
getting
most
acknowledged.
most definitely.
It's like
It's,
imposter syndrome at a level. It's not casual. It's like industrially manufactured. It's impressive in a weird way.
I mean, but it fits the Iron Warrior motif of like industrialized warfare. Everything's industrial to Peter Turbo here. So, but I guess we'll go ahead and delve a little bit deeper into his origins. So let's talk about Olympia. When the Primarchs were cast across the galaxy by the hand of unseen and malignant forces, Perturabo fell to Olympia, a world of rigid order and ceaseless intrigue. The precise details of his earliest years remain obscured, shrouded in half truths and contradictions. Their sources long suspect, even in the era of imperial iterators. What is known, though, is that he did not arrive gently. He was not cradled by fate or embraced as a savior. He was found, alone and unyielding, among the unforgiving rocks outside of the city-state of Lokos, pursued only by whispered rumors of a child unlike any other. Stories reached the ears of Tyrant Demechos, tales of a wandering youth who moved from settlement to settlement, selling his skill as a warrior and a craftsman of unnatural brilliance. He stayed nowhere for long, bound to nothing, refusing attachment, yet leaving behind marvels of artistry and tales of cold, efficient violence. Intrigued, the ruler of Lokos dispatched his men to find this boy and determine how his talents might be turned to advantage. They found him climbing the rain-slick cliffs below Lokos' walls, ascending with precision and a siege engine in motion. Recognizing at once that this was no ordinary child, the guards seized him and brought him before their lord. Damachos, ever the calculating ruler, did not waste time with the pleasantries. He tested the boy with combat against warriors twice his size and many times his age. Perturabo broke them with methodical ease. He challenged him with riddles and puzzles devised by his most learned scholars. The boy dismantled them as though they were crude playthings. I would like to note, before we go on a derailment, that these are Primarchs we're talking about. So, yes, Perturabo is technically a child. He's still probably like 3 or 4 feet tall and has like the biological age of like maybe someone in their teens. So, keep that in mind whenever we're talking about any Primarch's childhood.
Yeah, yeah. It's a cool childhood so far, you know, he's just like this wanderer. He fights people and then he builds like cool little creations or statues and just leaves little trinkets lying around. Um, it's interesting that like right off the bat he's kind of got this like builder aspect, which I don't think, you know, he gets enough credit for in his later years.
He certainly wouldn't say so.
Nah.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
the first sentence right there about Olympia, cold and calculating, that just tells you right out the gate how this is going to turn out for him.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, Nemo.
Oh, don't even worry about it. It's part and parcel, really. A lot of Primarchs have incredibly similar starts, and I very strongly believe that writing on the fluff did it deliberately. You can better understand individual Primarchs by comparing them to other Primarchs. For example, one of the things that surprised me overall is you don't really see more comparison from the Iron Hands to Perturabo, because there's both an emphasis on making, although one's crafting whereas the other's architecture, whereas Perturabo's the architecture. So here we are, and this is where I bring it back to Blueberry Land, because his start in the life he was raised in is incredibly similar to the court style upbringing that Gilliman experienced. It's effectively the same setting they were raised in, at least in broad strokes. Gilliman had that relatively primitive, but not completely primitive land with modern industrial-ish warfare, with city-states and warlords, and the father was a warlord. But what really, really, really strains it out is that Gilliman and his legion, we all know what that became. And here we are with Perturabo. On one hand, Gilliman will harvest the accolades, whereas Perturabo is at least somewhat infamous for just not getting them. I really think that Gilliman could have been a second Perturabo.
Yeah, sure. I feel like the big thing on McCraig there is different type of planet. Like it's not a cold, calculating. Like it's a kind of a warm planet. Gilliman had a mom and stuff. Yeah, you strip everyone away and you could all be somebody else for sure at the end of the day.
Perturabo had a warm sister, and now she's dead.
You're not wrong. You're not
Like,
wrong.
there's a lot of similarities. Like, don't get me wrong, I like my Perturabo, minus the edginess, but still, I mean, you can't see this if you're not seeing the live stream, but I'm shaking my hands in a kind of whataboutism way.
Like you're
Don't get me
fondling
wrong,
two testicle sacks there with your theory. You're
I
fondling
wouldn't
the
go
River
that far.
Gillimet. No, that's what it's looking like, I think.
I'd say 3, maybe 4.
Ah,
I'm sorry, I can only
big
derail so hard.
hands.
I
Oh
mean, I
gosh.
can conspiracy theory anything with varying levels of quality, so by all means,
I mean, with any Primarch, this is essentially nature versus nurture when you're looking
Yeah.
at the loyalists and the traitors. Like, you look at what they each are and what aspect of the Emperor they are, and then you look at where they ended up landing, and then how that kind of fueled that spark or hindered their potential. In Angron's case, my apologies to Toasty for not mentioning how sympathetic Angron was. Please don't mail me bad things. Just had to put that out there for Lorehammer legal reasons. Anyways, back to Perturabo. A pact was struck between them. Damocos offered patronage, protection, and the finest training his court could provide. Perturabo, in return, would serve with loyalty and fealty. A simple agreement, transactional and absolute. But if Damocos hoped for devotion, he received none. If he expected gratitude, he found only cold, implacable acceptance. Accounts of those years are divided. Some portray a prodigy of staggering intellect and unnatural discipline, an unrelenting student who absorbed all knowledge set before him. Others whisper of something colder, a youth who never trusted, never belonged, who regarded his Olympian kin with distant suspicion. Even his adoptive father, who spent much time fostering this strange son, found no warmth in return. There was a reason, though no one but Perturabo himself knew it. The first time he climbed those cliffs, exhausted and rain-soaked, he had looked at the sky, and there, among the stars, something looked back. A shifting, nebulous maelstrom, an unnatural storm that no other could see. And when he asked the guards what it was, they saw nothing. And yet, for the first time, for the rest of his life, that unseen presence loomed over him, watching, measuring, waiting. Whether it was judgment or mockery, he could never know, but he felt it always. And in return, he learned to trust nothing.
that's neat as hell because I think, and not to do the work of the fanboys for them, that Kurz is the only other Primarch that constantly felt that gaze.
Kind of, yeah, that like faded for ill almost. Yeah, that look like a predator's watching you. Yeah. Huh.
And there's a fun little thing about that, but I'm going to turn this over to Nemo because that little factoid is in his section.
Oh,
Yes.
you don't say. Marcus
I
always
do
gives me
say.
the best. Marcus always gives me the best sections. The best sections. We have the best sections.
It's true.
Over 2 centuries, the cold, unrelenting presence of the unseen maelstrom weighed upon him, its silent scrutiny shaping his every thought, hardening his every instinct. It was a watchful force, distant yet inescapable, a thing that did not waver or wane. In time, it would become more than a nameless anomaly. It would be given a name of his own devising, one that would one day cause entire civilizations to tremble. The great rift between real space and the immaterium, a wound in the galaxy itself, would come to be known as the Eye of Terror. Among the people of Olympia, the foundling was regarded with unease. A cold, distant boy, ever brooding, ever silent, ever apart. Yet, how could he be otherwise? Cast out from the void, a being of unnatural intellect and unknowable origin, he had no ties to those around him, no reason to grant them trust. Suspicion was his first lesson, distance his first defense. Still he observed, he learned. Olympia was a world of strife, its many city-states locked in the brutal cycle of siege and counter-siege. He watched, absorbed, and mastered the art of war at its most methodical, most ruthless. And a quick little micro side tangent, I promise I won't stop it for too long, that siegecraft was the majority of warfare in the ancient world. You do not engage in open field battles unless you are absolutely certain you're going to pace the enemy, because you didn't have any of the advantages of your defenses, your logistics, and your ability to control the field by using physical fortifications.
Yeah.
Unless you want I don't know anything on top of that, guys.
Yeah, like I haven't
Yep.
really got a strong Greek vibe from the Iron Warriors before, but yeah, this very much is like just city states battling this planet, you know, and obviously with the name Olympia and stuff. I'll be curious to see now, reading a little deeper, if that Greek kind of bleeds in a little bit more, you know.
You can kind of get it from like I know I was about to say Peter Turbo from Perturabo's name. You can kind of get it from there, and then like
Yeah,
some of
like
the
that's a
naming.
Latin word for to disturb.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep, and some of the naming conventions of other Iron Warriors, like the one off the top of my head, like Dantioch, that is very much like a Mediterranean
sure.
Greek name.
Yeah,
Another
yeah.
very infamous Iron Warrior is Hansi, but I don't think that's that's very Greek to my recollection. Someone feel free to correct me in the chat.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not a fan of Hansu for, well, we'll
Yeah,
probably
he's like
talk
a
about that when
40K
we
character though, so like, you know,
we'll
he's pretty
we'll talk
far away
about
from this.
that. We'll talk about that in that part of the Iron Warriors stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, like I said, I'm gonna keep my eye out for it. It's, you know, another little detail.
There's a lot that is not completely standard about Perturabo. When the time came for him to take his name, he did not follow custom. He did not bow to the traditions of his adoptive house, nor honor the venerated ancestors of Lokos as expected. Instead, he chose a name from a distant past, a name pried from a text written in a dead language that only he had deciphered with his boundless intellect. Perturabo. What it meant, he never explained. The name was his alone to bear, and none, like his own burden, could lay claim to it but him. War awaited him, as it always had. The enemies of Damocos became his own, for his oath bound him to the tyrant's cause. He was given command, first over minor forces, then over greater and greater legions of warriors. His rise was not gradual, it was inexorable, it was meteoric. Victory followed victory, each conquest more decisive than the last. His legend grew, and with it came mercenaries, soldiers, artisans alike, drawn by the promise of plunder, the certainty of success. Yet, Perturabo was more than a warlord. His mind was an engine of creation as much as destruction. Knowledge yielded to him without struggle, and soon Locos overflowed with the fruits of his genius. Designs for machines, far beyond Olympia's crude mechanisms, treatises on architecture that would have reshaped the very bones of the world, advances in medicine, astronomy, and industry, all emerged from his tireless near-Renaissance hands. The people of Locos marveled at these gifts, but they mistook them for generosity. They did not understand. It was not for them. It was never for them.
Yeah, that's nice. Things are taking a dark little turn.
Salt,
it's
salt,
all
salt, salt,
about
salt.
me.
Yeah.
Add a little bit of salt to your to those Iron Warrior coffee beans.
He would
Delicioso.
mix salt in his coffee, replace it with sugar, and taste no difference until he wants to bitch about it after.
2 scoops of salt to his coffee.
Why would you be giving me such a salty drink? What is wrong with you? But you
Actually,
asked
I
for it, my
liked it.
lord. I don't care. I wanted sugar.
A week later, I liked it.
I guess it wasn't that bad after all. What happened? What happened to the guy that served me the coffee? Yeah, he turned into a server. Oh, anyways.
Oh well.
So slight tangent. You were talking about the more the Greek theme there, Mark. A lot of like if memory serves me correct, a lot of the like warfare, like what Nemo was mentioning in ancient Greece, was very siege based, but there was a lot of mercenaries and city states just kind of banging together, mostly for the purpose of plunder, loot, debauchery, that sort of
Ladies,
thing.
yeah, sure.
Like the Trojan War, that was the reason it was a 10-year long expedition was because like half of that time was spent just trying to gather an army together that would cooperate for 5 seconds to actually lay a siege.
Yeah.
So
Huh. Cool. Yeah. Fun times to grow up then.
A liar told us something.
Just a dash of salt and old black coffee is actually kind of nice. Maybe I'll try that tomorrow, but we'll see.
You don't already?
No. Yeah, no, I wake up in a different way next to Colombia. A little bit, anyways, back to Perturabo's origins. It was through war that Perturabo's name was carved into legend, and it was through the forge of destruction that the hammer of Olympia was born. His mind yielded new weapons, advanced munitions, and siege engines beyond imagining. Machines of brutality and precision, each a testament to his mastery. Under his command, Locos became the dominant power of Olympia. Its force crushing rival city-states with mechanical certainty. 100 domains lay broken beneath its heel, countless more subdued without a fight, their rulers too terrified to resist. Yet power did not bring peace. Victory begot only dominance, and dominance drew the knives of the envious and the fearful. Assassins stalked the halls of Locos, their blades and poisons ever seeking the warlord who had made it mighty. Tyrants of conquered cities reasoned rightly that without Perturabo, Locos' reign would crumble. But worse still were those who stood beside him, those who called him friend, family, ally. Well, in secret, they feared him, loathed him, plotted against him. By then, the Primarch stood apart from all of them, in body and in mind. He towered over them, a titan among insects, his intellect vast, his purpose absolute. He had no need for their petty illusions of court grace or fragile trinkets of power. To him, they were meaningless. What mattered was strength, knowledge, and certainty that no betrayal would go unpunished. The world whispered of him in dread, a warlord of merciless calculation, one who neither forgave nor forgot, for whom failure was met with iron and blood. His sigil bore the executioner's mask in the heraldry of Cavithos, a warning, a promise, death to the transgressor. Yet, despite all his power, despite the ease with which he could have seized Locos for himself, Perturabo did not betray Damocles. The tyrant of Locos remained upon his throne, bloated with protected not only by his strength, but by the simple fact that he had never given Perturabo reason to break his oath.
Frozen.
It was not loyalty nor sentiment.
Hello.
It was principle.
I think
Perturabo had given his word,
Peter
and
Turbo
he would
here
not
is taking
break it
offense to what
lightly.
Mark is saying.
Perhaps fate had been patient. The warlord would have waited for a time itself to claim Damocles. The old tyrant, already eroded by indulgence and corruption, would have faded, leaving Locos and all of Olympia to the only one truly worthy of ruling it. What Perturabo might have made of his world, what great dominion he could have built of his own design, would never be known. For that day could come, the sky itself betrayed him. A new star burned in the heavens. The Emperor had come for his lost son. This is a cool little planet, actually, that he kind of gets to mess around in, where he's just so clearly a cut above everyone else, as all planets or Primarchs are when they land on the planets. And then, he just kind of goes on this conquest. But, it's not just like he's conquesting and, like, making slaves of everyone. He's known for being a builder and making, like, brilliant inventions and making the city better when he leaves it almost. Sure, you got to destroy the city first in siege warfare, but he might rebuild it.
But nobody knows better how to take a place apart than a siege engineer, and nobody knows better how to make better infrastructure than a siege engineer.
Unless we forget, that's like one of his Primarch. Each Primarch supposedly has like a gift or a very special trait. His is finding the exact pinpoint spot of weakness for any structure, any object, anything, so that way he knows how best to destroy it. That's why he's so good at as a siege engineer, is he knows the exact weakness just by observing it. But the problem is he knows it. The other problem is he knows he's better than everybody, and now he does not have that thrill of discovery like the rest of us do.
Sure. Interesting.
Oh, and hello to
Peaked.
Jack in the
Hi, Jack.
comments. Hi, Jack.
Oh, you saying hi to you. You have a fan, my dude. Very nice.
I'm shocked but I'm honored, so thank you.
Yeah, so he's got a little bit of a complex develop in there, hey, where he's already like, I'm better than this planet. Like, I'm beyond this. Like, yeah, he's looking for more.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
also the perfect Perturabo sandbox in a unique way. You could not ask for a better playpen for this guy to go around wrecking and building shit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Basically. So, well, let's talk about when the Emperor shows up, because this ought to be very interesting. The arrival of the Emperor upon Olympia in 849 M30 was not an unforeseen revelation to Perturabo, but rather the confirmation of a truth he had long deduced. The moment of his so-called recovery was not a conquest, not a negotiation. It was inevitability made manifest. Sorry, makes me think of the "This is democracy manifest." Okay, tangent over.
Get your hand off my limp penis.
What's my crime?
Democracy.
Enjoying a meal, a succulent Chinese meal. You see this headlock? You see this headlock?
Oh,
good job, old chap. Okay. I'm sorry, chat.
Watch out the charges. Yeah, the chat loves that.
Okay. I lost my reading spot. The tyrant Damocos, ever pragmatic, relinquished his claim upon the Primarch without hesitation. For Olympia's satrap, I'm guessing that's what it is, the cost of surrendering Perturabo to the Imperium was trivial compared to the alternative. The transition was seamless, unchallenged, unlike the tumultuous reunions some of his brothers endured. There was no need for grand speeches or tearful revelations. Perturabo had already reasoned out his nature. He was no mere child of Olympia, no mortal creature bound to its petty rulers. He had always been something more. The arrival of the Emperor was simply the moment the last variables fell into place. Taken to Terra, he was subjected to the expectations of destiny. The lessons, the histories, the indoctrination. Among his brothers, he sought knowledge, not kinship. The annals of human antiquity fascinated him, their remnants buried beneath the detritus of old night. It was among these records that he, alongside Magnus of the Thousand Suns, pursued the echoes of a civilization long undone. The Firenze, their forgotten wisdom, their lost grandeur, such things mattered to Perturabo. Not sentiment, not glory, but the hard truths of the past. The proof of mankind's ascendance and its failings. The esoteric knowledge of a world before ruin became his obsession. The blueprints of a future yet to be built, or perhaps one doomed to be shattered once again.
Yeah, it's interesting that he's so after knowledge, and not even like esoteric knowledge, like just like how does everything kind of fit together and work? Like it's just a very mechanical mind for sure.
But to draw a note that it's not warp knowledge, it's not Thousand Suns knowledge, it's not the desire to worship something as a particular set of granite warriors might. It's physical knowledge, material knowledge, scientific, cultural.
Yeah, it's almost like, like Gerald was saying, he looks at something and he can know the weak part. Well, in order to do that, he needs to be able to build it and destroy it to some degree as well. He has to kind of have that knowledge. Like, how strong is this metal? And will it crumple or will it bend? Will it snap? Or just so many different little areas of just even math calculations and whatever he would need to kind of know to just do siege warfare. So kind of an interesting knowledge. It's like, the more he acquires, the easier it is for him to just kind of break stuff or put stuff back together.
And that really comes to a head too, because this is before he was found by the Emperor, but there was a segment in his Primarch book where he was challenged by, I think it was his foster brother to a building competition or whatnot. It was like, you're supposed to build the greatest statue. Whoever builds the greatest statue is the one that gets all the glory and the accolades or whatnot. and they both go. Yeah, they both do their thing. They build a statue. Perturabo, obviously being a Primarch, he builds the best one. Period. But then he comes to find out the whole competition was rigged in his foster brother's favor. And so the foster brother wins. He gets humiliated because everyone was showering obviously the lesser person with all the accolades and everything. So he just destroys both statues in like a fit of petulant rage.
Yeah.
Even though, like we talked about, like he's more cold and calculating, he still feels very slighted. He still has that hurt pride.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Like, you know, we talked about Fulgrim and how he thinks he's like the perfect at everything, the best at everything. But you know, Perturabo, I'm sure, feels that same way up till this point, you know, where he is the best at everything he's pretty much touched. So yeah, to like injure his pride, it's so easy. Like, you know, it just would be so easy to just rub him the wrong way with just being inferior, just being a normal human.
Well, that's how he says hello. One of the things that makes the Primarchs the most is how they respond to the arrival of the Emperor. No games, no competitions here as the Space Wolves might have. The relics of ancient Terra, its philosophies, its lost civilizations, held greater fascination for Perturabo than the mere machinery of the past. Knowledge was his domain, and in those early days of discovery, he and Magnus the Red found common ground. That doesn't surprise me. Both shared an insatiable hunger to unearth what had been forgotten, to pry into the secrets buried beneath the dust of old night. Yet Magnus moved through the galaxy with an ease of camaraderie. Perturabo remained apart. Friendship was not something that came to him naturally, nor was it something he sought. Those who endured the cold distance of his manner and proved their worth might earn his loyalty, a loyalty he had once believed immutable, but time would teach him otherwise. Even the hardest iron breaks when strained beyond endurance. From the moment of his reception, his intellect was a matter of record. All of the Emperor's sons possessed minds that outpaced any unmodified human, but Perturabo's brilliance was something else entirely. The speed at which he consumed, processed, and applied knowledge was staggering, and it was said that of all the Primarchs, he was the most gifted in raw technical and scientific knowledge. And within that is also a note that when he was sitting at the court with his father, and they were feeding him the wise, learned scholars, the men of the realm of the planet, he might have been the one Primarch who chewed through them the quickest. Side note there.
Yeah, that's so funny. They all come to him with the craziest riddles, and he answers it instantly as this like weird savage warrior person.
He not only cut the Gordian knot, he showed him how to make a better one.
Yeah, there we go.
Yet his genius was not wielded for the benefit of others. It was turned inward, locked behind walls of cold calculation. He was not one to explain himself, not to the mortals around him, not even to his so-called brothers. To them he was distant, impassive, his indifference sharp enough to wound. If they resented it, so be it. He had no patience for their need for connection, their posturing, their grandiose ideals. Oh, I can tangent that. I can tangent it so hard, but the show must go on.
do it. Do it.
Oh, okay. All right, I'm doing it. This is the difference between the Emperor's children and in their focus on culture and social knowledge, and this Primarch's understanding of culture and social knowledge. It's not that he didn't get it. One of the easiest things to talk about Doran, as some specific podcast that I won't name might say, some say Doran may not know how to read. But this Primarch gets it. Perturabo gets it. It's not that, like, Perturabo is more interested in making the amphitheater a perfect amphitheater than in concerning himself with what's in it. He's more concerned in making the acoustics in that amphitheater perfect, whereas the Emperor's children may be interested on what happens on stage. This is why I like Perturabo. I like my very technical Primarchs because I'm a bit of a technical asshole. Technically, I am an asshole. But this is the difference between the Iron Hands, the Thousand Sons, the Emperor's Children, and what we have here. Right there, in a nutshell, right there.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah. He builds that perfect amphitheater. After that, doesn't care what happens to it. He's like, yeah.
And if you give him a round
No.
of applause for it, he'll just look at you like you're an idiot.
But then turn around
Mm.
and bitch that you didn't give him enough round of applause for his accomplished works.
But you only find out a month later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And by that point, you've been servitorized for some other bullshit reason he came up with.
And he wrote his retort on the cup holder that was built into the servitor's arm in calligraphy.
Yes, of
This
course.
is
As one does.
that is a Perturabo thing. Yeah, I could see it.
He's such a salty asshole, and I love him for it. The Emperor cared little.
Nope, go for it.
The Emperor cared little for such personal failings. He had not come seeking a son. He had come seeking a weapon. And in Perturabo, he found one. A warlord, an architect of annihilation, a mind that could reduce any campaign to its raw components, to dismantle it with merciless precision. To Perturabo, war was not a test of honor or glory. It was a problem to be solved, an equation to be balanced, a task to be completed with the cold efficiency of a master artisan. And soon, the galaxy would learn what it meant to face the full force of his relentless, murderous mind at work.
The way he treats his guys, his Astartes under him, are very different than most other legions.
It's
There's
not cold. It's sterilized.
Yeah, it's a step more for sure. Oath of Moment. The Emperor's grand design for the Great Crusade was relentless, an unstoppable force meant to unify all of mankind under the banner of the Imperium. And when the time came, the Emperor sent Perturabo out into the galaxy to fulfill his role in this sweeping conquest. Like the others before him, Perturabo climbed the Astartes Tower of the Imperial Palace to swear his Oath of Moment, an ascent that was much a test as his will as it was a physical feat. Each step up that polished marble spire was a grinding exertion of mental and physical strength, a deliberate defiance against the weight of the task before him. It was no mere journey, it was a trial of endurance, a psychic communion with the Emperor that tore at the very essence of what it meant to be a warrior. It was an ordeal that left no room for weakness. To pledge loyalty to the Imperium, to accept the mantle of Primarch, was no small act. It was the ultimate commitment to the greater cause than any personal grievance. With the oath sworn, Perturabo took command of the 4th Legion, the Iron Warriors. The Legion, born from his own bloodline, would serve as an instrument of war under his cold command. The once proud tyrant of Olympia, Damachos, was ousted from his position of power, replaced by the relentless will of the Primarch, who now ruled the world in the name of the Emperor. Perturabo set his Iron Warriors to work, initiating the brutal process of conscripting recruits from the finest Olympia had to offer, forging them into the perfect tools of war. Even this, he's not going about this gracefully. This is an efficient way to gather Astartes. He's like, I'm gonna go back and just start rounding up kids here. But Damocles, in his bitterness, would not simply fade into obscurity. His final years spent in futile attempts to rally forces, plotting to reclaim his rule and overthrow Perturabo. Though he ultimately failed, his efforts gave rise to a seething undercurrent of dissent among the people of Olympia, a simmering discontent that would haunt Perturabo and the Iron Warriors for years to come. The seeds of rebellion had been sown, and though they were not yet ripe, their bitter fruits would eventually make their mark. Primarch planet. What came first? Was the planet kind of bitter, and Perturabo just kind of latched on to that little aspect of it? We need a full 10,000 year history of this planet, what it's been up to. Did they mess up my sweet boy Purdy?
So the Emperor was splicing all kinds of genetics and components, some very artificial, some of them animal, some of them alien, into the makeup of the Primarchs. And I think someone by accident may have tipped over the salt shaker into Perturabo's little casket.
Yeah.
Salt and coffee beans. Lots of salt, lots of coffee beans. All bitterness. Speaking of bitter, let's get on with how he conducts himself in the Great Crusade. And we have ourselves a Perturabo quote, everybody. So let me get my voicing chops ready.
The master of voices.
Do it.
I wouldn't say that.
Do it. I would.
All right, how do I sound?
Hot.
Oh yeah.
Tell them ruin has come to their world. Death, despair, and red war. Tell them their hopes and pride have come to nothing. Tell them their empty whispers fall upon deaf ears. Their gods are dead. Human reason has killed them. Tell them the angels of death have come. Tell them nothing can save them now. Iron within, iron without.
Thus spoke Perturabo.
Yeah, that's a fucking cool quote.
Good shit.
Perturabo's time in the Emperor's company was brief, but it was enough to drink deeply from the well of knowledge that the Great Crusade offered. He absorbed its histories, its war machinery, its tactics, consumed it all with relentless precision, as was his nature. When the time came, the Emperor placed command of the 4th Legion into his hands. The transition was swift, unyielding, and absolute. The Legion, some 35,000 strong, was now his to command, with an additional force scattered across the galaxy in garrisons and detachments, performing their duties and watching over the territories they had conquered. So this is like 35 chapters worth of Space Marines, and this is on the smaller scale of how big these legions can get.
Yeah, isn't that a crazy thought?
I think it said before like the most numerous were like the Ultramarines and the Imperial Fist, and they were in like the hundreds of thousands. So that gives you like a rough scale of like how big this gets. Perturabo wasted no time in scrutinizing the war record, doctrines and practices of the 4th. And I'm an idiot, sorry. Perturabo wasted no time in scrutinizing the war record, doctrines, and practices of the 4th Legion. A cold, calculating mind, he compared them to the other legions and found them lacking. There was no room for failure in his vision, no tolerance for mediocrity. The punishment he deemed necessary was nothing short of brutal decimation. His decree was clear, indifferent to the pleas of any who might have argued for leniency. War is unequivocal, uncaring, unforgiving, and blind. Blind also will be the selection of those who will pay the blood price for the greater failure of your record. 1 in 10 of the Legion's warriors, chosen at random, were condemned to death. Their comrades executed the sentence with their bare hands, and there was no honor in it. This act was swift and unforgiving, a cruel reminder of the price for failure under Perturabo's command.
Ooh, that is spicy. Yeah, you don't see that happen very often. Yeah, and this is early Great Crusade that this is happening in this Legion. Where he's going around and decimating 1 in 10 guys.
To be specific, this is pre-chaos. He's doing this without the chaos juice in his veins.
Yeah, he's already at that level where it's like there's no time for shenanigans, man. Like everything's dialed up and he's ready to kind of like if there's a problem, he's going to deal with it for sure.
The Thousand Sons think they understand perfection. We will show them. Iron within, iron without.
The response from the imperial court was immediate and vocal. Some believed the emperor had made a grave mistake. No shit, Sherlock. Bestowing the full power of a legion to a madman. Others, more tactful, whispered that perhaps the Primarch had been given too much responsibility too soon, too untested in the ways of the Imperium. Raboot Gilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, was the loudest critic, horrified at the dishonor that had befallen the Astartes. These warriors, whose valor had once stood side by side with his own legion, had been condemned to death in such a way. This discord between the two Primarchs became a wound that festered, one that would never truly heal. The Emperor silenced all critics. Yeah, good move on that one, Mr. Emperor, sir. But the survivors of the fourth Legion's self-decimation understood the message. Under Perturabo, there would be no mercy, no favoritism. Failure was not just a setback, it was a sin. War to him was a binary equation, an unforgiving test of perfection. The Legion's failure was not a result of inadequate service in the Great Crusade. No, their sin was in fact that they had not reached their full potential. For Perturabo, they were not supreme. Not yet, at least. That was the only standard that mattered. I'm not punishing you because you failed in this conquest in the Crusade. I'm punishing you because you're not perfect from the start, is basically what he's saying. So.
Well, Perturabo was perfect from the start, so he's not asking stuff he wouldn't ask of himself, you know?
Again,
comes back.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Comes back with the milk and says, "Are you sure you're my son? You're not good enough." Damn.
It's like that. It's like that. Bipolar. Like, oh, I am perfect. Everyone else is beneath me. Oh, wait a minute. You're not at my perfect level. How dare you? Okay, 10 of you, go. Nope, nope, done. Beat him to death right now.
Done. Yeah.
You're
You go to
fired.
Gulag.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy that he makes them like strangle each other. You know, it's not bolt around. It's like, yeah, personal.
Well, ancient Roman decimation saw the other 9 out of the 10 beat their buddy to death, and they genuinely were friends. You don't fight next to a person for a long time without making some hardcore brother Astartes level bonds.
Thus he set about remaking his legion. They would become an engine of war so flawless, so unyielding that nothing would stand in its way. He began by turning his gaze to the Maratara cluster, where the Olympia Majoris star system lay at the edge. There, his legion's first true test would begin. Perturabo crushed the Black Judges, their once proud domain falling beneath the weight of his iron will. He then purged the ectosaurids of the Vericonia, eradicating them with cold precision. Finally, he brought the renegade knight fiefdom of Lixos to heel, solidifying his conquest of the entire cluster. It was only the beginning of the weapon he was forging, one with an edge that would not dull.
So yeah, he's conquering now. You know, he feels like he's got his legion sorted out. You know, there's that little bit of a hiccup at the start there with the little decimation, but you know, they're back on track.
That, if you want to include the late Roman Empire as being that Greek theme, that's that Greek theme coming back.
Because, I mean, what Rome did really well was incorporate a lot of stuff from their conquered territories, and that included a lot of what the Greek city-states did.
I worship nothing. I believe in nothing. A quote from Perturabo.
Yes, in the darkness of night. That's what he's saying.
If you can't see the live stream, I just did a little bow, but my arms got cut off by my camera filter. But you wouldn't know that if you weren't live stream with us in the live stream. So I mean, you should get
And
in the
if you're
live
not
stream.
in the live stream,
Get in
why
the live
not?
stream.
Get in the live stream, you heretic.
And if you get the models from the people that we got, you don't have to be like me, Abaddon the Armless.
Ooh, talk about a dig there. Talk about a dig there.
You leave him alone.
I can make it happen, but I'll be indecent about it. In the wake of their latest conflict, Perturabo's legion had sealed the fate of a rift that had festered for millennia, dating back to the Age of Strife, an ideological divide between the fragmented empire and the Mechanicum. The Fourth Legion, through sheer force, ended this schism, and in doing so, earned favor with the Lord of Mars. But the victory was not one of simple triumph. It was a crucible, a time of refinement and a harsh trial. Under Perturabo's watchful eye, the Legion was subjected to a brutal testing, one that would leave it fundamentally altered in ways that no one, least of all the Legion itself, could have foreseen. With a mind both cold and calculating, Perturabo set about remaking his Legion in his own image, not the image of Olympian nobility, nor the ideal of Terra, but one that was shaped by his own bitter, unyielding nature. He crafted the Iron Warriors not as a legion, but as a reflection of his own psyche. Bleak, relentless, unforgiving, the old legion of the Fourth was gone. Its legacy swept aside in favor of a new, perfected creature born from the fires of war. Upon returning to Olympia with his newly formed Iron Warriors, Perturabo's plans were already set into motion. In alliance with the Mechanicum, vast orbital shipyards and foundries blazed with unrelenting activity. These behemoths, many plucked from the dead orbits of conquered stars, were dragged to Olympia and refitted, expanded to fuel the Legion's endless hunger for more warriors, weapons, and munitions. The worlds of Meritara cluster, now firmly under Perturabo's control, contributed their tribute of flesh and blood, feeding his war machine's insatiable need for power. All of this, every world, every shipyard, every weapon was by Perturabo's design, each piece moving like clockwork to fulfill his unyielding will. The changes in the Iron Warriors were not some drastic shift. They were an amplification of what had already existed. Where once the Fourth Legion had been ruthless, willing to sacrifice lives for victory, it now stood as something colder, utterly driven, devoid of mercy or hesitation. Mortal fear had no place in the heart of the Iron Warriors. They were a legion whose sole purpose was victory, no matter the cost. War was no longer a matter of strategy. It had become a deadly equation, one which the Iron Warriors were supremely equipped to solve. They were an unrelenting engine of destruction, a monstrous force of steel and fire that swept across worlds, devouring armies and leaving nothing in its wake but ruin. I love that our system of derailment has accumulated to being a hive mind of ultimate derailment. It's phenomenal. What do you got, Gerald?
I mean, oh, nothing. I'm just checking out the chat of the chat of derailment, as I'm going to call it now.
Oh, yes.
Talk about
Yes.
cockwork in there. Yeah, very nice.
Mhm.
Very. Yeah, the Iron Warriors. It's very funny. Just like, what would they? So I kind of always rephrase this into like, okay, this is the Fourth Legion. Was the fourth time the Emperor kind of made a legion. What warriors went into this legion? And this is kind of going on. Like, yeah, they would kind of always had this little lingering in them. You know, it's funny how that always happens where the Legion is like the Primarch, or is the Primarch like the Legion before they're reunited, or whatever. But it always kind of converges together. So that's what we've
So
got
the
now.
one
I had this discussion with a friend earlier this week, and we were talking about like how much the Primarch's gene seed affects the Legion, and there are those rare cases where not only do they take on more psychological and behavioral traits, but some of them can and do end up physically like their Primarch as well.
Yeah, like facial features and stuff.
Exactly. Like obviously the most famous example would be the salamanders and Vulcan, but you got other examples too, like in the Luna Wolves / Sons of Horus, there's actually a
Little
little
Horus.
Horus because of like his structure started to resemble more like Horus as time went on. So what's to say that it doesn't happen on that level too with the Iron
Yeah, I
Warriors?
used to be like very opposed to that idea, but I think I'm getting a little bit more of it. It's just like, it just has to be subtle, you know. You can't heavy hand it too much. But yeah, no, yeah, definitely. Like the gene seed has some type of effect on kind of your operating system a little bit. Where yeah, now Legion and Primarch are definitely on the same page.
And it does make sense because Gene Seed is originally sampled from when they still had the Primarchs on Terra in their capsules in the Imperial Palace. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what part of the Imperial Palace, but I just think it was only ever mentioned as the Imperial Palace. No, it wasn't. It was a separate laboratory, separate from the Imperial Palace, but still in the Imperial Palace grounds. But no, it really does. It really is the flesh of the Primarchs, because it's very easy to forget that there is that fully biological throughput. It's not just something they talk about in the fluff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There is one real world Earth army in our close to modern day that is very similar to these guys. The Red Army of the USSR is infamous for training its officers, or at least if you're familiar with the practical military community, not the military enthusiast community. Even though I love you, Arma people, I love you guys. I love you so-called reformer types too, even if you're not reformers. But the USSR's army did have mathematic calculations for determining the number of reinforcements, shells, medicine. They had a few general systemic formulas for determining what materiel and on what timetable things would go in. And it was based on measuring the casualties on their side and presumed casualties on the enemy's side. And it was by tracking these individual numbers that they determined how hard they were going to hit and if they were going to hit harder or hit softer according to the numbers. And it's very these guys.
Yeah, like I can imagine Perturabo doing that too. Like when we always talk about how many space marines does it take to take on a planet, like Perturabo has that equation built out, and he's like, okay, this planet has a technology level of X, so that's gonna add 15 Astartes onto my equation. Oh, also they have an orbital gun. Okay, let's tack on another 10 Astartes onto this, and eventually he has this huge equation of how many guys he needs to actually take the planet.
And if there's even so much as one casualty, they failed. Even if they took the planet, they still fail.
The Emperor's children beat their brothers off, but with these guys, they beat their brothers to death for failure.
Yeah. Yikes.
Thought you'd like that one.
Yeah, that was hot.
Should I keep reading?
Spicy. Yeah.
Please. Oh man.
Nice visuals for sure.
All right, that's 2 for 1. Last time it was the Trump impersonations. This time it's
yeah.
that. Yeah, very nice.
Just some gay jokes, man.
Iron Warriors, lovely people. Iron Warriors, those lovely people. Lovely people, those Iron Warriors. Very simple, very calculating. This is great.
They're gonna build a wall. It's gonna be so big.
And they're gonna make the Imperial Fists pay for it.
All right, let's wrangle them giggles. Serious voice, serious face, serious voice. At the head of the newly constituted 125th Expeditionary Fleet, Perturabo now commanded a force that became the battering ram of the Great Crusade. His legion fought alongside the other legions, and wherever they went, they built a reputation for brutal efficiency. They were unmatched in battle, masters of armored warfare, unrivaled as artillery experts. The Iron Warriors' legend spread far and wide. It was said that there was no fortress they could not smash, no stronghold they could not breach, no army that could not drown in its own blood through the unrelenting fire of their guns. To challenge them was to face death, a death that would come with no mercy and no respite. For the Iron Warriors were the embodiment of war itself, unforgiving and all-consuming.
I love the imagery just of a bunch of Astartes on Medusa battle tanks just firing shell after shell, and the amount of shells that they fire would like brain dead Imperial guardsmen would just like mush their insides with the concussion of it all. But yeah, the Iron Warriors just pounding shell after shell after shell on the enemy while casually making some like dark humor. The artillery shells, man, that's a fun picture. It just seems like it's such a different way. Like, normally the Space Marines are like seen as that like surgical scalpel as opposed to the hammer of the guardsmen. So it's fun to see that kind of flip where it's like they're just gonna wreck this place.
Can you see in your mind's eye the camaraderie of these kinds of Marines is sharing new equations on which to calculate how many shells they're bringing with them and how and what, not what pace, not what rate they're going to fire them, but it's like a tempo, like a metronome.
Yeah.
The rate of the metronome of the firing shells, they're sharing equations with each other, not of camaraderie, but testing each other's equations on what the best firing pace of those guns on those troop carriers is going to be.
Yeah, if they weren't afraid of decimation, they'd be so skilled to like start blasting orbital shells over to the enemy and drawing like different artwork and stuff. Oh yeah, we just orbital bombarded a smiley face over there, but they don't want to get decimated. Yeah,
it's the poetry of death math.
Yeah. I like kind of that, like the beauty of the shells going off in some type of rhythm, and like you can hear like
like there's some mathematic calculations that result in particular shapes and particular. It's a math nerd thing, but there's particular equations that always result in particular patterns that turn up in specific ways on a graph. And you can make pictures with them. I imagine that the rhythm and the cadence of their firing guns draws a dick on your auspex.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. I know what you mean.
That's like some Fibonacci sequence bullshit right there.
Yeah, but they won't tell you it's there. You got to tune in and figure it out yourself because it's these guys. They're not going to show you the answer. You got to figure it out.
Of course not. And if you can't figure it out, well, then that's your problem. That sounds like a personal problem to me. Jax
Well, if you
makes a
can't,
funny comment, which makes me think of a meme. Krieg and Iron Warriors are brothers from different mothers, which makes me think of a. Makes me think of the meme. It's Demon 40K Perturabo in his like iron, like his full iron get up, and he's like,
Kill them all, leave no survivors. But this one, you can stay.
and it's just like a single lone Kriegsman, and he just stares at with his gas mask.
So the war for the Great Crusade continues, and now we'll talk about some bitter resentments. As the years wore on, the rift between the Iron Warriors and other Space Marine legions grew ever more pronounced. A chasm driven deeper by the relentless force of time and the growing resentment, pride, and paranoia festering within the hearts of Perturabo's sons. With every grim command and savage act, Perturabo had shaped his legion in his image, not of an Olympian grandeur or noble ideals, but as a reflection of his own cold, calculating nature. His warriors, who had once been driven by duty and purpose, now wore his darkness like a mantle, their hearts hardened with the same malevolent distrust, bitter suspicion, and callous indifference to the life that he had mastered. Alongside these corrosive traits, however, his desired qualities of ruthless determination, cold intellect, and unyielding strength also found fertile ground, their seed taking deep root within the Legion's core. It's hardly surprising, then, that the Iron Warriors became the embodiment of attrition on the battlefield, an unstoppable force, but at an unthinkable cost. Given the Legion's preference for open warfare, its penchant for siege assaults, the most perilous and unpredictable form of warfare, and the unwavering willingness from Primarch to soldier to bleed for victory, it is no wonder that the Iron Warriors are often cited as having suffered the highest number of casualties of any legion during the Great Crusade. Death and destruction were as much as part of their existence as victory itself, and yet, even in the face of unimaginable loss, the Iron Warriors persisted. Such losses did not break them. Instead, they endured, their combat effectiveness barely diluted by the slaughter that surrounded them. But beneath their relentless exterior, the toil of endless carnage slowly eroded the Legion's psyche, gnawing away at their sanity with the same inexorable force that powered their war machines. Whew. Yeah, what a way to do warfare with Astartes. You know, you spend fucking 10 years minimum to make this guy, and then you're just willing to just throw him away at the moment's notice in the battlefield.
could be worse. It could be Death Guard.
Just like how all the Primarchs are tools for the Emperor, the Astartes are the tools for their Primarch. So everybody's expendable.
Yeah, but you got to
Alright.
keep those tools nice. You got to treat them nice, man. WD-40 them, make sure they don't get too rusty on you. Otherwise, they're going to break.
All right, conspiracy theory. In the same way that the Astartes are from the gene seed, the Primarchs are aspects of the Emperor, and none of them are aspects of the Emperor at his best.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think you need like a balance to truly be best. If you're gifted in only like one thing, but you're the best at it, yeah, you need kind of like balancing factors for sure. Yeah, you know, it seems more and more that way for sure, that the Emperor intentionally created 20 Primarchs. Each of them had kind of a specific intention in mind. You know, were given some type of unique ability or unique enhancements. Yeah, for sure. You can always wonder like how much of it's intentional, how much of it is just happens with, you know, evolution or nature or whatever. But what do you think, Mr. Tinfoil Gerald?
I don't know. I was just grabbing my tinfoil hat for Nemo's conspiracies here. So
Yeah.
but yeah,
Why
I
did
mean,
I
I kind of
lie?
nah, I agree. I agree. I don't quite have the words for it, so we'll continue.
You have the best words. Don't worry about it.
You are way too kind, good sir.
For Perturabo and his sons, the concept of allies or friendships among the fellow legions was an anathema. They saw only weakness bred from self-deceit, indulgence in false mysticism, and the vanity of their so-called brothers. Every interaction, every exchange was laced with insult, whether real or perceived. Even the Mechanicum, who marveled at Perturabo's technological genius, could not bring themselves to trust him fully. The Iron Warriors' self-sufficiency, their capability to fight and build without needing the guidance of the Omnissiah, and the comforting lies of faith marked them as an enigma, dangerous, alien, and unyielding. As for the Exertus Imperialis, the Imperial Army and its auxiliaries, the Iron Warriors were a curse upon them. Their reputation among the common soldiers was a dark one, to say the least. More than any other legion, the Iron Warriors were seen as willing to expend human lives as mere resources, treating their auxiliaries with cold disregard. They would send wave after wave of these expendable troops, cannon fodder to be used up in the most brutal of strategies, testing enemy strength, luring foes from their defenses, or simply as fodder to grind down the opposition's resources. The grim irony of this tactic only deepened the disdain the Imperial Army felt towards them, with the Iron Warriors being loathed as the corpse grinders. Among their ranks of the Exertus Auxiliary, open munitions against their cold, calculating masters grew more common. Open mutinies against their cold, calculating masters grew more uncommon. Though these were swiftly and brutally crushed, often with overwhelming force, such reputed abusers eventually led to an order from the War Master himself, stipulating that the Iron Warriors could no longer be entrusted with the command of Imperial Army troops unless those troops were indentured criminals or enslaved non-compliance. Jeez. Yeah, that's quite the crazy rule to implement. Just like, you can't have useful people anymore. You can have these criminals, you can have these conquered people, but like, yikes.
What came first, the Legion or the Penal Legion?
It's just a sick joke.
All my jokes are sick. Is this a trick question?
I don't know. Is it? I don't know. This was a measure taken to prevent the corrosive effect of the Iron Warriors. Had a morale from spreading any further, though it did little to quell the resentment simmering in the hearts of those who fought alongside them. Yeah, just really not good. Like there's a line there that kind of said like Perturabo had mastered life. So at this point, it seems like he's almost just bored. Like there's a little bit of boredom. Like, yeah, he's gonna win this siege. He'll just keep throwing people at till he does. And yeah, it's a puzzle, but he will solve that puzzle eventually. So there's a boredom in that, and then that like starts to breed discontentment and all that kind of stuff, where he's just sitting alone, kind of. He doesn't have to spend as much time calculating how to take this fortress anymore. He can just spend time brooding that no one complimented him.
Well, it's like we talked about earlier. It's like he does have that Primarch brilliance to him. Like there's no longer that thrill of discovery, so there's no longer that serotonin or that dopamine hit of like actually completing a conquest. So yeah, he is bored of doing this, and yet he's also getting all the pardon the phrase, but he's getting all the shit assignments like the Harud or what was the other one? It was a really tough campaign that he endured, but like he said nothing about, but at the same time was like quietly like, okay, when's my time in the limelight? Come on. Like it's very contradictory. Very contradictory.
I know the campaign you're talking about, but I can't think of it either.
The Harud was definitely a big one, but was it also the Sloth or the Rongdon Genocide?
Oh, that
I know Dark Angels also had a part in that campaign, but I can't remember if it was also the Iron Warriors.
But it's tricky because all the most major campaigns, with the exception of maybe the HUD and maybe one or two others, always had some kind of collaboration among legions, because the numbers, even at pre-heresy levels, sometimes just were not enough.
Yeah.
And Seth asked if there's ever going to be an episode on the Rongdon Genocide. So obviously, like eventually, soon TM.
Eventually, sure. Yeah, if there's enough information there, yeah, for sure.
It's the best part about the setting. If you give it time, it'll give you enough content to make any Gossip Girl happy, and we three Gossip Girls are more than happy.
Yas Queen, slay.
Oh God, he went for it. Phenomenal.
Hey, that's what you get for that Emperor's Children comment. So much.
You are only encouraging me.
No, never mind. Okay, bitter resentment. But wait, there's more. By the final decades of the Great Crusade, the Iron Warriors had become an isolated, resentful force, their relations with other legions marked by simmering disdain and open hostility. These guys just don't seem to play well with others. And that's saying something as a Space Wolf fanboy. But anyways, the friction between Perturabo's Legion and the Raven Guard, born of the Isunder War, that's all I'm going to say, it was a prime example of this growing antipathy. But it was the rivalry with the Imperial Fists that truly stoked the fires of contempt. Okay, come on, Doran fanboys, I want to hear you. Even in instances where the Iron Warriors fought alongside their brothers, such as the critical campaign against the Mashog, their contributions were met with indifference, if not outright disdain. The battle against the Orc was a bitter illustration of this dynamic. Well, Mark sat there sounding like a grot.
That's a damn good voice.
Whenever you're ready for Boss Graka to make a return in Dadhammer, let me know.
Yeah,
And I love how the chat's just going wild with the wah for Dorn, fortify. I'm loving this. This is just great. Okay.
Yeah.
What did I say? Okay, the Space Wolves and White Scars had failed repeatedly to breach Overdog Mashog's formidable orbital fortifications, but Perturabo's calculated and brutal plan shattered the Orc defenses, as you do. Yet in the chronicles of his brother legions, his achievement was recorded with a cold indifference, and his name was omitted, reduced to nothing more than a comrade in arms. This dismissal, though perhaps subtle at the time, only served to deepen the fracture between the 4th Legion and the rest of the Imperium, a schism that would only grow wider following Horus's appointment as Imperial War Master. This makes me think of basically near the end of Game of Thrones. If y'all have not seen it, spoilers ahead, fair warning, you've been warned now. In Season 4, Tyrion Lannister was a very smart, very calculating hand of the king advisor, whatever. He's on trial for something. Once someone comes out to speak in his defense, and he tells Tyrion, "You are a great man," and in minced words, "You are a great man, but histories will not remember you. The histories will not name you." Skip ahead to the very end of the series. A historian actually writes down the events of the entire series, calls it a Song of Ice and Fire. Ha ha ha! Name drop. And then when Tyrion makes it, and he asks, "Okay, where's my part in this whole story?" And then the guy's like, "Yeah, you're not mentioned in it at all."
Yeah, you're not actually a player in this, by the way.
Yeah. It's like,
Denied.
not even a mention? No, you're not even named at all in this. So that's what this makes me think of.
He's only half the character.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be laughing so hard at that. I should not be laughing so hard at that.
It's fine.
Oh, man.
I never said my sense of humor was good.
No, you said it was sick. I like it. Horus's reorganization of the Great Crusade scattered the Iron Warriors across countless expeditionary fleets, garrison postings, and thankless sieges in the farthest reaches of the Imperium. These were assignments of little prestige, meant to bleed the Legion dry while others reaped the rewards of glory and conquest. Perturabo's 125th Expeditionary Fleet, thrust into the jaws of the enemy after enemy, was denied reinforcements and resources. The Iron Warriors received nothing but the cold weight of duty, an endless grind with no respite. Perturabo, unyielding and bitter, complied with each order, and his legion followed suit. Their resentment growing as they were forced into the most unforgiving corners of the galaxy. One can only wonder if this was not, in fact, the design of Horus all along, to fracture the Iron Warriors from the Imperium and drive them further into the darkness. Almost like this was planned from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all just a tool or a piece in somebody's game, eh? Perturabo was planning his stuff. People are planning things around him that he's unaware of. Yeah.
I mean, if you can summarize the entirety of Warhammer into like 2 sentences or 2 concepts, daddy issues and everybody's a pawn in somebody's game.
Yeah, sure.
When your daddy refers to you by number, that certainly can't help.
The Iron Warriors' role was increasingly relegated to garrison duty, with their successes in siege warfare leaving them cast as the Empire's eternal defenders. Iron citadels are built on conquered worlds, fortifications meant to hold Imperial ground against ever-encroaching threats. But these stations were often manned by only the smallest of contingents, one tactical squad for a world of millions, like the Iron Keep on Delgus II. where a mere 10 warriors were tasked with holding a population of 130 million. I know Astartes are good, but even that seems to be pushing it.
Yeah, that's
They would be pissed off with you for saying that on both sides, for the too much and not enough. That's
yeah.
Iron Warriors.
And Perturabo's just going to complain about it the entire time, no matter what side of the spectrum you're on in that regard.
Their effort
Meanwhile-
wasn't optimal enough.
Exactly. Yeah. Meanwhile, other Primarchs, Russ, Vulcan, Magnus, refused to disperse their forces, keeping their legions intact for the greater battles ahead. But Perturabo, he obeyed, begrudgingly, and with each passing order, the bitterness within him festered. How are those coffee beans tasting there, Perty? The Iron Warriors were becoming nothing more than a tool for garrisoning worlds, splintered and dispersed, left to maintaining order in forgotten corners of the Imperium. The Legion's unassailable expertise in siege warfare had become their curse, turning them into the go-to force for any garrison mission, no matter how trivial or degrading. This disregard for the needs of the Legion, its warriors' need for rest, for reorganizing, for proper campaigns, nurtured a resentment that festered at every level, and at its core stood Perturabo, a Primarch trapped in the slow, grinding torment of unending duty, his resentment boiling toward the Emperor who had turned his Legion into little more than a tool for others' convenience. The Iron Warriors had always endured, but now they were enduring for no greater purpose than to feed the Emperor's endless demands, and it was a bitterness that would eventually consume them all.
It's so funny. The Emperor is just like, what? I thought you would like this. This is just like your home world. Like, I'm just going to give you a bunch of sieges and you can do some garrisons and fight in these wars. What? That's just like your home world, man. You should love it. But he does not. Not a fan.
If you like something enough, you kill it. That's the moral you get from the Iron Warriors.
Ah.
You could call it a hollow crown. The path of the Iron Warrior's damnation is a labyrinth of contradictions, its motivations inscrutable, its descent into betrayal, both sudden and inevitable. More than any other legion that would ultimately side with Horus, the Iron Warrior's fall remains shrouded in uncertainty. While whispers and lies swirl around the Iron Legion, while whispers and lies swirl around the Alpha Legion, the story of the fourth is one of gradual, inexorable corruption, though not one that can be easily pinned to the influence of the ruinous powers. Unlike the corruption of the other legions, there is no overt sign of damnation or infernal pact, no obvious hand of chaos guiding them into their dark future. Once the Iron Warriors were faultlessly loyal, but now that loyalty shattered, not in a violent outburst, but in a slow, calculated erosion, one that outsiders could only watch with a mix of confusion and detached horror. Many who observe from afar, stripped of bias, believe they see the inevitable result of a legion, worn down by endless attrition, the weight of death and loss too much to bear, for those who were never celebrated, never thanked for their service. For too long they had been sent into the crucible, only to be discarded once their strength had been bled dry. And for what? A cause that had no value beyond conquest? A victory that led only to more bloodshed? As this relentless pressure mounted, so too did suspicion, mistrust, and a gnawing resentment. Perturabo and his sons became twisted not by the pull of the dark forces that had claimed so many others, but by their own twisted reflection in the shattered mirror of their own service. There was no whole-scale corruption, no clandestine pact with ruinous powers. Instead, the Legion grew sick with jealousy, arrogance, bitterness, poisoned by their own disillusionment and their obsessive drive for victory, one that was increasingly empty and hollow. Their minds were not shattered by the touch of chaos, but by the weight of their own failure to see any higher purpose in their ceaseless war. Some would argue that the true flaw of the Iron Warriors was a lack of belief, an inherent absence of faith. They did not believe in the Great Crusade, nor in the Emperor they served. They did not believe in themselves, seemingly tools of destruction, nothing more than machines built to kill. The very pragmatism and cold logic that made them such formidable soldiers had, in the end, become their undoing. They had been honed to the perfection for war, to grind down all obstacles, but when faced with the existential terror of doubt, they were ill prepared. There was no doctrine, no grand purpose beyond victory and conquest. Only the grind. For Perturabo, the Primarch's mantle became more than a hollow, violent license for bloodshed, a justification for endless slaughter without meaning or value. His victories empty.
Yeah, isn't that a crazy kind of little insight there about life? Like, if you don't have some type of like higher power, or if you're not looking forward to something, if you don't have life goals and stuff, man, like all of a sudden it just becomes like almost unbearable, you know?
The seams
Okay.
that brought
Yeah,
together the
there's like no
grand,
point to any of
the grand seams that brought together the grand cloth of the Grand Legion were its very own undoing. Cheers.
Cheers, mate. I'll drink to that.
Perfect Legion for it, honestly. And it wasn't even Chaos that did it. Like, at risk of enticing the Curse fans, it's like a sane Curse.
I mean, you're not wrong. Like, the Night Lords and the Iron Warriors are that perfect case of like you didn't have to have chaos for them to turn traitor. Like, the situation surrounding them and their Primarch completely led to their fall anyways. So no Khorne, no Nurgle, no Slaanesh, no Tzeentch needed for such things.
Just as much as
just kind
Horus
of
brought
idle
together,
hands, or idle mind.
just as much as Horus brought together the loyalists at the best of times, without Horus, there would not have been a heresy at the worst of times.
But would it have been a Lorgar heresy?
Dornian heresy,
Rabusian heresy?
Slaaneshi heresy.
The low guards.
Oh, that's low hanging fruit right there.
I actually kind of ran out of answers, so I just went for the easy one. I sorely apologize.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Jack makes a point here in the comment. I mean, without purpose, what's the point? Like,
Yeah, for sure, man.
You're an automaton essentially. So
It's hard to put it better than that.
Iron and stone. Similarity breeds understanding, or so some claim. Yet in the case of Perturabo and Rogel Dorn, the Primarchs of the Iron Warriors and the Imperial Fists, respectively, this theory is utterly shattered by the cruel weight of reality. Though on the surface they appear as near perfect reflections of one another, beneath the surface is a chasm so vast it would swallow them both. Both taciturn, both unyielding, both supreme masters of war. Their shared qualities could have fostered the closest of bonds. They were men defined by indomitable endurance, by an unrelenting commitment to their craft. The battlefield was their domain, and their mutual understanding of it should have bound them in camaraderie. Yet, for all their similarities, a deep, festering enmity thrived between them. The notion that two such equals could come to loathe one another is beyond reason, but it was reality. Perhaps from the very first moment they stood face to face. The true source of their rivalry remains unknown, only to Dorn and Perturabo, but the closer inspection of their actions and interactions reveal a pattern of behavior that offers a glimpse into their rift. It is clear that their very qualities they share were the source of their discord, not the bond that might have been expected. Both were abstinent, and their stubbornness was only amplified in the face of challenge. Both rarely spoke, retreating into their minds behind masks of stone and iron. And it was in that silence, so similar yet so oppressive, that they both provoked each other. So similar yet so the bluntness of one's words would send the other into a fury. The intransigence of both ensured that any disagreement would escalate into a bitter, unyielding standoff.
So, quick little story about the Dorn / Perturabo feud. This is really quick. I can't remember what source it was from, but it was basically like a victory feast during the Great Crusade, and someone made like the the who would win in this battle type of thing. And so someone made the comment of because it was known that both Dorn and Perturabo were good at siege mastery and fortification. So one of the Primarchs asked, who would actually win, Dorn or Perturabo, and who would actually breach whose walls the best. And of course, Dorn would just being Dorn said, I could breach Perturabo's walls, no problem. He would have very, very, very much difficulty breaching mine. That was the start of that whole entire feud. Just that little bit of wounded pride is what set everything off with them. I'm very much paraphrasing how that story
Just
went, but
that
that was like
little
the
bit.
basic gist. Just that little bit.
Though the core of their rivalry may have been rooted in their similarities, it would be a mistake to ignore their differences. These differences, though often secondary, only exacerbated the tension between them. Both favored siegecraft and warfare, but how they applied it could not have been more different. Dorn, ever the idealist, viewed war with a certain nobility, even in the face of sacrifice. His pragmaticism never extended to accepting unnecessary bloodshed. He would bear casualties only when it was absolutely required. For Perturabo, there is no hesitation in applying overwhelming force, in sacrificing entire swaths of men, if it meant achieving his objective. Where Dorn held on to some semblance of the principle in the execution of war, Perturabo saw only the harsh, relentless logic of necessity. On these fractured foundations of idealism versus pragmaticism, the Great Crusade heaped pressure, accolades, and misfortune, each deepening the chasm between them. They were two sides of the same coin, but their shared pursuit of victory. They grew to despise what the other represented, and so, from that conflict, history would carve an equanimity so potent it would lead both their legions to the precipice of ruin, dragging with them everything they had fought for and everything they had become. It is interesting, yeah, just with that small, slight kind of ruin what you had thought the best of friendships would it be. Like, these guys designing cities together, making the Imperium safeguarding, that could have been the future, but no one really wanted that. Not even Perturabo wanted that, even though that's maybe what he pretended he wanted it sometimes. But
Looks over his shoulder. Just as well as I made it, I could break it. I bet you that's going through their minds every single time they fortify an Imperial sector.
yeah, exactly.
If I need to come back later and siege this place, how would I break it?
Yeah, exactly. Leaves little trapdoors, little portcullises, places that he can sneak back in to re-siege if he has to.
Damn right, break it better than them.
So I think that's where we're gonna leave it for Perturabo's kind of origin and his Great Crusade antics. He was born on a planet that had very little time for anything but war. It seemed very cold and calculating, practical. The planet was always at war with one another, city-states on city-states. And when he came, he conquered that planet real quick without too much effort. And we kind of use this word a lot, like mastery. Like, he kind of mastered life on that planet, and then he got bored. And thank goodness the Emperor came, because who know what that boredom would have left to if he was just trapped on that planet. But he goes out into the galaxy and starts conquering after some slight step back, some slight kind of tweaks to how he envisions his legion. The legion is 1 in every 10 people, I think, is too many. Just small little tweaks to the personnel. And he does make his way through the Great Crusade and claim many worlds and stuff, but he always has a high attrition rate. He gets very grumpy because of all this stuff. Over time, he starts getting all these shitty kind of fortification jobs, and now his legion's kind of scattered and just standing around idle, which also leads to just idle hands of the devil's playthings, which leads to more resentment, just like this angsty kind of boy left talking to himself, and the more he does, the madder he gets.
It's the subcontractor's nightmare. Little did you know he was the original architect.
We do have a little bit about his personality and his war gear up to this point, and then definitely some call-ins, but let's put the story on pause there for a second, and in the next episode of the Horus Heresy and the Scouring, we'll pick it up and see what happens to him.
I'll grace everyone with one more Perturabo quote concerning his personality.
You don't know the things I dream. No one does. No one ever cared enough to find out.
Though Perturabo had spent the entirety of his life entrenched in siege warfare, digging trenches, raising cities, and orchestrating destruction, it was far too easy for his fellow Primarchs to forget the depths of his intellect, the advanced gene-enhanced mind that rivaled the sharpest of their number. He was no simple brute, no mere engineer of carnage. While the other Primarchs wielded their talents with undeniable brilliance, Magnus with his arcane knowledge, Horus with his unparalleled military genius, Perturabo's greatest strength lay in his ability to remain underestimated, to allow his brothers to see only what he chose to reveal. Under that veil of assumed simplicity, however, was a calculating, merciless mind, capable of the most advanced technological feats and the most profound engineering brilliance. Gifted with a natural affinity for technology, Perturabo could debate the finer points of the most esoteric mechanicum arts with the highest adepts in the Imperium, exchanging words that would confound lesser minds. His genius was not in the execution of siege warfare. It extended to a meticulous understanding of precision, an unyielding drive for perfection in all things, whether they be in destruction or creation. A mere journeyman? Hardly. He was a craftsman, a creator at his core, capable of making works of such breathtaking intricacy that they rivaled the creations of Magnus or Gilliman. Perturabo's inner sanctum, the hidden domain of his genius, bore witness to this obsession. Inside its confines lay a collection of wonders, masterpieces of stonework, murals, and artworks that illustrated the full scope of his mind's grand designs. The sanctum was a silent testament to the extent of his creativity, vast architectural plans for amphitheaters, impregnable citadels, ornate palaces, and unimaginable fortifications that no architect of Terra had ever dreamed possible. These were not the idle fantasies of a despot, but tangible works which could reshape worlds, cities, and destinies. The amphitheater designed for the Council of Nicaea was one such example. Its intended use as a venue for strength and skill twisted into a place of trial, a betrayal that shamed Perturabo beyond measure. But Perturabo's talents were not limited to the grand and the imposing. His genius extended into the smallest of creations, delicate machines, intricate trinkets, and impossible constructs that spoke to a hidden side of the Lord of Iron. He crafted miniature war machines, 40K reference, gilded bird cages that would never imprison a creature, and even a golden lion intended for Lionel Johnson, though it was left unfinished. These creations, built with the hands of a giant, spoke to a side of Perturabo few ever saw: his love of craft, his obsession with perfection, and the quiet anguish behind every failure.
It's interesting, like, I really like how much he builds, and it's not just weapons that he builds. Like, sometimes it seems like he'll build things without even having a reason for it. Like, he'll build it just for the sake of building it. For example, those gilded bird cages. Like, it just seems like he wanted to make the perfect bird cage, the most elaborate design, the most confining or whatever, inescapable. Like, that's just what he wanted to do. He had no desire for the bird inside. Once again, he doesn't care who uses the stage and for what necessarily. He just kind of wants to do the build.
To dip into
Do it.
this
Do it.
Okay. To double dip into this nerd thing, if we're in Minecraft terms, Rogaldorn would be the big builder in Minecraft, but Perturabo would use all the redstone in Minecraft to make these intricate machines that go along with these grand structures.
Yes.
And
Redstone map.
Angron is the creeper that fucks it all up.
His sanctum. That's where we are. His sanctum, a hermetically sealed chamber known only to his trident, his most trusted counselors, was a treasure trove of history and genius, carefully preserved and hidden from the eyes of all but the most loyal. It was in this space that Perturabo's affinity for detail was most evident. He understood the minute intricacies of his craft better than anyone, whether it was reducing an alien fortress to rubble or calculating the golden ratio. That was a big one. I think that was part of the Fibonacci sequence we kind of alluded to earlier, within the curvature of a design. Angron had condemned his attention to detail as wasted effort, while Gilliman lauded it as his greatest strength. Two different men, two divergent views, both of which were rooted in truth, but neither fully grasping the relentless drive that fueled Perturabo. And on the miniature wargaming thing, there is actually a scene between Perturabo and Fulgrim that, with Mark's permission, at the end of the episode I'll read out to just
Sure.
as a sort of appreciation. Even though I do think he's a petulant man-child, he does, give credit where it's due. Give credit where it's due.
Liar said crafting with no goal. It's almost art. Liar the underrated. We have Jax the underrated, and now we got Liar the underrated.
It's almost art. Yeah.
Craftsman at heart, Perturabo approached every task with the same single-minded devotion. Each endeavor, whether building or destroying, was approached as though it might be his last. For his legacy was forged in the precision of every action. It was a need to prove himself, not just as a warlord, but as something more, an architect, creator, a being of significance. Beyond the destruction he wrought, despite his stoic and distant nature, Perturabo possessed an affection for his sons, though it was more reserved, less demonstrative affection, and that shown by some of his brothers. He was no stranger to discipline, nor was he one to coddle his warriors. Failure in battle was intolerable. Surrender was never an option. Mercy was a swift death for those who had fought valiantly. But beneath his cold exterior was a mind capable of unrelenting fury, a fury that erupted when his own people rebelled against him. The consequences of that rebellion were catastrophic, and in the aftermath of his genocidal vengeance, Perturabo was consumed by an unbearable despair. His mind unable to fully comprehend the magnitude of his actions. That betrayal was a harsh awakening for Perturabo, for it shattered his understanding of loyalty. His devotion to the War Master, Horus, was absolute. A bond could not be broken, no matter the cost, and yet he found that loyalty was not as immutable as he once believed. This revelation, as bitter as it was, became the foundation for a new worldview, one that saw his oaths as binding. No matter the outcome, no matter the fight, his loyalty was to Horus, and to Horus alone.
Yeah, there's a little bit more of that petulantness where it's like, I've been hurt one time, so I'm never gonna trust again. Just like,
He's
it's
a teenage
fine,
girl.
man. Yeah, it's fine. You get over it, man. And he does, and he swears his loyalty to Horus and stuff. But it's interesting how that deeply affects him. Yeah, even though eventually he goes on to betray people himself. But
Fans of the Iron Hands want to go back in time and get out medics with the boys. Fans of Horus and the Space Wolves want to pick up their chain axe and break things. Fans of Perturabo want to go back in time and give the guy a hug.
the Emperor should have just played some Warhammer with him when he was kind of doing his thing. That would have
For
saved a
real.
lot of time, eh?
It would have with that miniature clockwork titan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Dad never plays with my Warhammer.
Seth, don't spoil the scene in the chat. I'll get to it at the end. Just be patient.
Seth, you gotta call in. You gotta. In his mind, there was no such thing as loyalist or traitor. These were only those who fought for the Emperor's cause and those who did not. All were tools in the Emperor's vast exploitative machine, and the Emperor's Astartes were no different. It mattered little whether they stood by Horus or the Emperor. In the end, all that mattered was who emerged victorious. As the Great Crusade wore on, Perturabo's temperament became increasingly volatile, his sense of control slipping beneath the weight of his own fury. The massacre in Olympia, which he had orchestrated in a fit of vengeful rage, had left him emotionally scarred. A man who could not bear to face the atrocities he committed.
Let's actually cut that right there. We don't know what quite happened on Olympia yet, but we do know something now happens there. So stay tuned for the next episode. We'll find out what fucking happens on Olympia. Yeah. But so as we know with Perturabo, his personality is like he's a loner. He gets hurt over the stupidest things. He holds a grudge. But man, like there's a couple cool things I really like. Like I love this builder aspect where, yeah, like he was supposed to just kind of build for the Imperium. That was probably his role after all of this. But instead he kind of got siloed into these kind of stupid jobs and just sacrificing men and all that. If he was hugged, maybe he wouldn't be so cold and calculating. Maybe he would have treated his guys a little better.
I like the there's a series of memes, and it was like a dude is talking to the emperor, and it's like each slide is about like, hey emperor, maybe you should actually show a little bit of recognition for Perturabo. Hey emperor, maybe you should have helped Angron with his fellow slaves on Nuceria. Hey emperor, maybe you should have let Morty take care of the necromancer on Barbarous. And
Yeah,
then the
yeah.
emperor is just like the Chad meme. No.
Nah. How about no? No, I got this. Yeah.
Well, when your armor is all gold and your buddy's armor is all made of gold, you know you can never be wrong.
This is true. And you're taller than everyone else too.
You're just looking down. They really are lesser.
In the words of Plato, I have bigger muscles. Your argument is invalid.
Yeah, there we go.
Just gonna flex in your general direction.
What's up?
Yeah, like so what would have happened, Perturabo, could he have been a decent guy? Could he have found a spot in the Imperium? Probably. He just needed to not be so whiny, I guess. Just needed a little attitude adjustment.
I would like to point out that he does get called out on this by somebody, but that is for the next episode, because that happens.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, that beatdown, that verbal beatdown he gets is like later, is like during the heresy.
Yeah, okay, interesting. Yeah.
Like all good things, they happen at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, this is a good little teaser of him so far. So we'll read through his war gear, and then we'll get to some call-ins and see what everyone thinks. So his first piece of war gear is the Logos, and that's artificer armor. The Logos is the pinnacle of Perturabo's unique and fiercely personal armament. This artificer craft suit of cataphracti patterned Terminator armor is more akin to a fortress than a suit of battle gear. Its heavy ceramite layers provide unparalleled defense. The armor's size and complexity are a testament to Perturabo's obsession with perfection and its boundless intellect. Designed for both ultimate protection and tactical dominance, the Logos integrates advanced command and control systems that directly link Perturabo's mind to his forces. A sophisticated array of weapons, including a teleporter homer for tactical mobility, a Cortex controller for automation command, and a Nuncio Vox for communications, and a Cognis Signum for improved targeting, ensure that Perturabo is always in complete control of the battlefield, no matter how chaotic it becomes. Cool. Yeah, he just has every little upgrade and add-on onto this little piece of armor. One of the things we mentioned here and we haven't really talked about was the Cortex controller for automation command. And, Perturabo, he didn't really want anyone around him ever, so his bodyguards are actually automaton. I forget what they're called. I think they're called like the Iron Circle, but I forget what style of robot it is.
That cheeky bugger had to call his Voxcaster, or at least his Vox Grill, a Nuncio machine. Of course he did. Of course he did.
What is Nuncio?
Oh, So, do you know what a word of power is? The ancient Egyptians believed that there was such a thing as called words of power. You know, the idea of when you know something's name, you have complete control over it, especially in demonology, both in the occult and inside of this. There was a language with the old lore called Nuncio. And Nuncio was special because if you knew one true word of Nuncio, you could shatter buildings, you could shatter continents. It was disgustingly powerful. It was back in the day when
Interesting.
they were called the sensei, which is exactly what it sounds like. They were meant to be the emperor's biological children. This was pre-Primarch in the very old lore. Like, this is apocryphal level of old lore. But Nuncio was a language that the emperor effectively wiped out from the universe because it was deemed too powerful. Malkador is on record for understanding some level of Nuncio. And him calling that device Nuncio is him being a magnificently disgusting Primarch nerd.
Yeah. That's like that deep callback knowledge that only he would get and appreciates for sure.
Oh,
that's funny.
Oh yes, like that's peak me being a salty level of I called it something you don't understand. It's almost like you called yourself emo forever.
He also has Forge Breaker, crafted by Fulgrim in the forges beneath Mount Nerodana on Terra. Forgebreaker is a monumental warhammer of both beauty and brutality. Its haft, carved from an unbreakable, marble-patterned alloy, is a testament to Fulgrim's craft. Though its purpose is far from ornamental, the head of the hammer is made of steel and gold, is deadly in its simplicity, while the spike reverse adds some element of gruesome practicality. After the tragic death of Ferrus Manus at the hands of Fulgrim during the Dropsite Massacre, Horus bestowed Forgebreaker upon Perturabo, signaling the Iron Warrior's full allegiance to the War Master. The weapon serves as a symbol of destruction, fit for the god of the siege warfare. Before that, what weapon did he use? I recall seeing it, but it's like, did his model not have a second weapon option, or was it just like an empty hand?
This, mind you, this is a third party option,
Ah.
but it basically follows the official Forge World one. But this is Forgebreaker and the combi bolter that's brought up. So, and then there's
I thought he had another weapon too at some point.
I think I know he did beforehand. I can't remember. Think off the top of my head. So
yeah. Well, as you mentioned, he has that wrist-mounted combi bolter. This brutal and innovative weapon is a fitting extension of Perturabo's need for efficiency and destruction. The wrist-mounted combi bolter is designed for quick, overwhelming firepower. Its custom-loaded heavy bolter rounds are equipped with plasmic, armor-piercing warheads capable of devastating even the thickest Space Marine battle plates. These warheads burn through flesh and bone, turning their victims into fiery pyres, their bodies consumed by the incendiary rounds. The weapon reflects Perturabo's mind for engineering and his savage, relentless pursuit of battlefield supremacy. Yeah, that's fucking cool. Bullets that set you on fire. He's also got frag grenades. Those are just your standard 40k grenades. And the final kind of main piece of war gear that he likes is called the Tormentor. And this, once a Shadow Sword super heavy tank, Tormentor has undergone extensive modifications to accommodate Perturabo's massive frame and his retinue of automated bodyguards. Its superstructure has been entirely overhauled by the Machina, making it far more resilient and lethal than its original design. The enhanced weaponry of the tank allows it to lay waste to entire battalions with terrifying efficiency. No other vehicle in the Iron Warriors Legion's arsenal is as feared as Tormentor. It represents the ultimate expressions of Perturabo's warcraft, an unrelenting, unstoppable force capable of crushing, decimating anything in its path. Fucking owns a nice little tank for himself, and a Baneblade style tank nonetheless.
Does it go choo-choo?
Oh, it goes choo-choo. Yeah, you don't want to get in the way of this tank. It'll mess you up.
Hell yeah, brother.
Fun fact about the incendiary rounds. You can actually get those in this day and age for shotgun shells. They're called Dragon's Breath.
Oh, if you ever get your hands on those in reality, please be mindful of your surroundings. Those things have burned down forests.
Those things are very dangerous, and for that reason, they actually are illegal in several U.S. states.
They're illegal, and I'm pretty sure 1/3 of the world at a minimum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean that all goes into like the whole flamethrower problem.
Please don't ask me how I know this.
Come on, we've all tried to buy flaming ammunition and been turned down by the government. I don't know why they don't think we can handle it, but
that's gasoline-based napalm. That doesn't count.
So
cool. Well, yeah, that was the episode. That was some of his war gear and all that kind of stuff, kind of that history, like we said, and yeah, that leaves us ready to dive into the Horus Heresy next episode. We are taking call-ins if anyone wants to call in. I just dropped a link in the chat, and yeah, we got time for a call-in or two.
Who do you think's going to be our first victim?
Let's start with Jack first. Give me a little nod if you're ready. Hey, Jack, welcome to the show.
How's it going? I just want to open with a thank you for, opening this with a better Primarch than I don't know, somebody like Kurz or something, somebody lame like that.
Yeah, of course.
Just want to say, at least we're starting strong.
Yeah. I know what the people want, and they don't want Kurz.
No, everybody hates Kurz. Like, Kurz is lame, really.
Nobody wants Kurz.
No.
Yeah.
Could you imagine wanting Kurz?
No, exactly.
Not even the Emperor wanted him.
Conrad Kurz. He's the lamest. Exactly. That's why we want Perturabo. The opposite.
None of the Chaos Gods prefer him either.
Yeah, it's great. Exactly. No, us autistics, we have it hard.
So yeah, you're a fan of Perturabo. You like him?
Oh, sure, I guess. I mean,
Sure.
listen, he's better. He's better
Okay.
than
Okay.
Curse. I know
Okay.
nothing about
Yeah, I
him.
like. I think the biggest thing that kind of goes under the radar for Perturabo is definitely how much he likes to build. Like, yeah, we know he likes siegecraft, but it's more than that, man. Dude's building little trinkets and like ornaments and also weapons as well. But like, it's a very wide, varied craftsmanship ability that he has.
Yeah, I unironically had no idea. That's I thought his whole shtick was just destroying shit.
Dude, that's what the Emperor wants you to think. That's what the Emperor wants you to think. Dude just wants to sit in his quarters and play Minecraft, just like his brother Dorn.
Just like the rest of us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They're so hashtag relatable.
Yeah. Do you think he's overreacting for some of the things that kind of happened to him? Like, is he holding on to a grudge? Is it rightful?
I mean, okay. First off, I get literally everything he was doing. I mean, like, maybe don't kill as much of your own dudes, but like, it worked. It worked. It worked. If
Yeah.
it broke, don't fix it. Like,
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah,
I nominate Jack for
personally?
War Master.
Yeah.
exactly.
Every now and again, Lorehammer crew deserves a good decimation. So I understand it happens, man.
You know, and we just gotta get rid of the undesirables, cull the herd. At some point,
Yeah.
you'll have dudes not dying.
Yeah.
Wait, no, they're not breeding. Okay, well, at some point, you won't have to care. So,
Not my
you
problem.
know, exactly, right? Like, I just work here, you know? I don't know.
What was maybe one thing you hope to hear more of in part 2 of the Perturabo episode or Iron Warriors kind of stuff?
Honestly, I'm just, I'm pretty interested in just like the how he kind of developed more from like after the heresy.
Ah, yeah, okay. So the scouring and after, like, yeah, it's interesting where he kind of turns into a demon Primarch and how that kind of happens, since he's not one of the big 4 chaos gods and stuff. So, yeah, it'd be fun to kind of learn that.
Yeah, no, that's honestly some of the aspects that interest me the most. Sorry, 2 of my coworkers are like tasing each other outside of the door.
Okay, well,
That's hot.
go get at.
Yeah, right. Like I don't know.
Go get in on that.
I'm scared. Yeah. That's pretty much. Aside from like the other stuff I learned about, you know, the Emperor's children and how they have sex with each other. It was you know, it was a pretty. I didn't know he built. I didn't know the Emperor's children were all having sex with each other. You know,
Those
and
two
it's
things
nice
we
to see the
learned.
representation.
They
Yeah,
do
I mean, that's
nothing
what I
else.
took away.
They do absolutely
love
nothing
it.
else.
Well, if that's what you took away, Lorehammer's doing its job. So good
Exactly,
on all of us.
exactly. I derailed more like on the rails, you know, and on the crazy train. It's
Yeah. More like snorting a rail, but you know,
Yeah,
we don't
and
want to
you know
get
what?
derailed here.
listen, snorting rails, that means you're rich, all right? You don't do coke unless you got the money to do coke. Coke money,
This is
You sound like an Emperor's Children's fan.
yeah.
I honestly, I don't know anything about them. And you know who'll teach me? Lorehammer.
You get it. Welcome to the club. You're
Yeah,
one of
we
us.
got you.
Exactly.
Don't worry. Cool.
I don't know
Well,
anything.
thanks for calling in there, Jack. I don't know if I want to say it was insightful, but I laughed, so that's nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the insight we really need.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool,
All
man.
right.
Thank you for calling in.
Have a good one, guys.
All right, we got one more call, and we'll welcome Seth to the stage. Just give me a little nod if you're good to go. All right, hey, welcome back.
Hello, fellow Iron Warriors, sons
Ooh,
of Perturabo.
You're a fan of the black and yellow stripes, are you?
Yes, of course. I love chaos and filth, the dark gods.
He says while wearing an Imperial Guardsman helmet.
Yeah.
Do I still have that on?
We never saw it there.
Yeah. Don't decimate them. Leave them alone.
Cadia stands. We're just like Family Guy. Cadia stands, unlike you, Joe.
Well,
I-
well, Dorn still loves his children, so he's been gone for 10,000 years, but I'm pretty sure he still loves us last time I checked.
Yeah. That's just time fuckery in the warp. He didn't mean to be gone that long. He'll be coming back. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, he's coming back with his fortified almond milk.
What did you do with the phalanx? You fucking wrecked it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Perturabo, do you like his character? I don't know. Tell me your thoughts about him.
Okay, so you know how big Dorn fanboy Imperial Fists gotta love him. But I gotta say, I do love how Perturabo sort of. I did mention it earlier. I don't like the theory that each Primarch is meant to be an anti version of another Primarch. I do like the idea that there are certain facets that each Primarch is supposed to be good at. I really enjoy how Perturabo is. Yes, he's supposed to be anti-Dorn, but he does Dorn's job too. He does a little bit of Gilliam and being a tactician, and I think that's real.
Yeah.
He's very immature about it. He's given so much and decides to do nothing except yell and throw things. But I think he's actually pretty cool. Don't tell any of my other fellow Fist players, but like he's kind of neat. Like if I had to play any Chaos Space Marine faction, it'd probably be Iron Warriors or Alpha Legion, in which case I can do a little bit of both.
Would you say you can appreciate Dorn better by having Perturabo to contrast against?
Oh, definitely, because yeah, Dorn and Perturabo are kind of vaguely cut from the same cloth, and they both were given vast legions with Space Marines, except Perturabo just decided to kind of he decided to pity himself more, whereas Dorn, kind of just sucked it up and just, fortified. He fortified his emotions.
Yeah, there's a saying where oh man, fuck, it's gone from me. But basically it's like pitying yourself is one of the worst things you can do to yourself because it's comfortable, it's easy. People then feel sorry for you, and then that gives you a little hit of endorphins or whatever. It's a very easy spot to kind of be in this like self-pity, kind of self-hatred, victim mentality. And then yeah. And that's where he kind of falls into it. It's like, he wants everyone to acknowledge him because then it kind of makes him feel good, but at the same time, it's like kind of a fucking dick about it always.
Yeah, Perturabo could have fully been like another Dorn. He could have been like another Gilliman, but he chose not to.
He chose decimation, essentially.
He chose decimation, yeah.
Peace was never an option.
Yeah.
There's only war. Okay, question for you, Seth. Let me rephrase your statement about Perturabo being like the anti-Dorn. Would you say that's more? So you say you don't like it as an intentional design. What if it just because of how each Primarch is, that's just how it naturally fell into place? Like what you were saying, Perturabo could be another Dorn. He could have been another Gilman, but because of his choices, he just happened to have landed into that anti-Dorn type of role, so to speak. Would that be a little bit more palatable, or
that sounds more right? Yeah, it was because of his. It wasn't entirely his fault that he sort of he was a little bit forced into becoming a sort of Dorn, anti-Dorn type character because of the Emperor giving the Iron Warriors the worst assignments, setting them against the Sloth, the Frud, and the Rangden. But I feel like, no, what you said totally makes sense.
Is there any Primarch that you could make disappear that you think would make Perturabo better?
A Primarch who would make Perturabo better?
By not being there. And therefore, is there any Primarch that you would remove that you think that by not being there would make Dorn better?
Okay, well, first off, for the Perturabo question, are you trying to get me to say Dorn? Because I would never erase Dorn.
No, I think they're needed. They're two sides of that same coin.
No trick question here.
Yeah.
I would hope not. No trick question.
I haven't read much of the Horus Heresy books because I cannot afford them. But
we're all Inquisitors here.
Yeah, but so for if I could erase any Primarch to make Perturabo better, Lorgar seems like an answer, but it was kind of Perturabo. The answer's always a Lorgar. If you're trying to make a Primarch better, it's always Lorgar.
That's funny.
But
You're not wrong.
You're not wrong.
Perturabo. Honestly, sounds a bit silly, but the best Primarch to make Perturabo better is just get rid of Perturabo.
I mean, that's not a wrong answer
to
either.
make him better, there's like, that's actually kind of tricky question because like the Emperor forced him into being what he is now. The Emperor gave his Legion all the worst assignments.
I think though, like that trend already pretty much had happened. Like I think Perturabo sealed the fate of his Legion as soon as he decimated. Like that was the direction of the Legion, and from there it's like, okay, all of a sudden everyone's looking at you like you're crazy. And then all of a sudden your casualty reports come back and they're super high. And then all your allies start saying like, all we ever do is just run at the wall and make body piles, and all these things start stacking up before the Emperor finally is like, okay, like you guys are kind of out of control here. Like take a step back.
Right.
Yeah, Perturabo keeps going down like further and further himself without anyone really holding his hand. He's just doing it to himself.
And Nemo, earlier you asked if I could remove any Primarch to change Dorn. Did you say make Dorn better or make Dorn worse?
I believe that there are no Primarchs that are truly alone. And that if you really if you have a favorite Primarch, any favorite Primarch, even if it is one of the lesser ones, like with the Night Lords, it's by comparing them to other Primarchs so you can understand them better.
Yeah.
For sure.
To an improvement for both.
Sorry.
I was kind of screwing with you. I'm terribly sorry for the most part.
If I were to make Perturabo better, this might be crazy, but maybe I'd say Fulgrim, because Fulgrim kind of went around antagonizing him specifically, like during that scene. I'm not going to spoil too much, but Gerald during that scene, you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
So I'd say maybe.
I got that scene pulled up for whenever Mark's ready for me. So
yeah,
I'd
you
say
could
maybe
almost read it right after Seth here.
Fulgrim, because Fulgrim is supposed to be grandeur and being over the top, and Perturabo is just working man, evil. He's the embodiment of evil Home Depot. He's gonna.
I don't know. Just use it to fortify and destroy you.
That's perfect. Oh, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
I love that analogy. I'm going to start using it now. Evil Home Depot.
I'm stealing that.
So Perturabo's kind of like he's very much not like Fulgrim, so I could see where Fulgrim being Fulgrim would antagonize him. So I'd say Fulgrim would probably make Perturabo maybe at least a little bit more sufferable. As for, I think you asked me earlier, I could be wrong, but I think you asked me how would I make a Dorn worse? I have read the Dornian Heresy, so the answer would be Horus, because if you didn't have Horus, then it was either going to be the Lion or Dorn who became War Master. Hence, all of that follows. Not that Dorn would ever be bad, of course. He's too amazing. His soul is too fortified.
His mustache is too great.
Of course, his glorious mustache.
The jawline is too fortified.
I must fortify this position, Father.
Cool. Any other thoughts there, Seth? Or
Other than I really wanted to remark that his armory is pretty cool.
Of all the
You don't really
Primarchs,
see
he
it
is
much?
one of the cooler ones for sure, where it's like super custom, like
You see
just
Vulcan
looks
using
heavy.
flamers a lot, but honestly, out of the Chaos Space Marine Legions, I could absolutely see like Perturabo and the Iron Warriors using a ton of like flamers and meltas. I think that'd be a really cool choice for like a Chaos Space Marine army.
Yeah. I'm still going like all artillery, man. That would be the Iron Warriors I would do. Just all artillery.
Yeah,
There's-
no, definitely.
And there's just something so primal about like that just raw steel and the black and yellow hazard stripes. There's just something so primal about that drip.
Yeah.
Right,
man.
no.
Cool.
Yeah. The evil Home Depot drip.
Caution. Don't want to get hurt here.
I really want to hear that quote, so I'll get out of here.
right,
Thanks for letting me call in.
All right, cool, Seth. Thanks. Adios.
See you later.
All right, Gerald, lay that little quote on us,
Okay,
that little story.
It's a somewhat lengthy excerpt, so I'm just going to try and keep it to just like the dialogue. But for context, it's Perturabo and Fulgrim are cooperating in a campaign, and then Fulgrim enters Perturabo's quarters while he's kind of tinkering with like a miniature Warhound Titan. Again, 40K reference. Perturabo sighed and returned his attention to the clockwork model of the Warhound. You are never so certain as when you don't know just how wrong you can be. Is it broken? Asked Fulgrim. The perpetual motion driver at its heart is losing time, said Perturabo. I thought that was impossible. On the contrary, a genius of old Earth discovered the theoretical principles thousands of years ago, but he lacked the technology to manufacture a working prototype. I have many of his journals and secret papers in my library and was able to extrapolate what had been lost to draw up the schematics for Vulcan to build. Fulgrim nodded, already bored. I would have thought Vulcan would have better things to do with his forges, like making guns and swords. Then you don't know him at all, said Perturabo. His love of the forge encompasses all things, from crafting weapons to fashioning miniature wonders of artifice. But that one thing isn't working, asked Fulgrim. Then he's not as good as I heard. No, it was perfect. It was damaged during the fight at Fall. It fell from a shelf and the mechanism was knocked out of alignment. If you listen closely, you can hear the variation in each cycle of its mechanical heart. I have no interest in your toys, said Fulgrim. Listen, insisted Perturabo. Fulgrim sighed and leaned in close to the table, turning his head to listen. Perturabo's hand flashed out and gripped Fulgrim's hair. With sudden force, he slammed his brother's face into the Warhound. The wondrous automaton shattered into 1,000 pieces at Fulgrim's head, as Fulgrim's head crunched into the pitted surface of the workbench. Fulgrim cried out in pain and painful shock, and his captain surged forward. Fulgrim's eyes blazed black and his face glimmered with reptilian malice. He started to speak, but Perturabo didn't give him the chance. Like a fist fighter going for the kill, he battered his brother's face with pistoning jabs until he had him backed up against an iron column. He pinned Fulgrim in place and drew back his free hand to reach the forge breaker. The hammer rose, but Perturabo left the blow hanging. Fulgrim's perfect face was met with wound, leaking blood, snot, and tears. His breath was hoarse and clogged with phlegm and broken teeth. His eyes were swollen shut. He tried to speak, but Perturabo cut him off again. No, brother. I am speaking now, and you will listen to me. I have bitten my tongue and allowed you to bring my legion into this place. I have followed your lead in all things. I have listened to your tall tales and allowed you to set the pace of this expedition. That ends now. He released Fulgrim, who held himself erect in the face of Perturabo's cold anger. He continued, your warriors have no discipline. Monsters fight your battles, and you have allowed an entire vessel to be sacrificed in the name of vanity, but no more. From here onwards, I am in charge for the duration of this mission. Your legion is mine to command. Your warriors will obey my orders, they will follow my lead, and they will do nothing except by my command. If you agree to that, then we will continue on into the Eye of Terror and finish this together. If you don't, then I will take my legion and leave you here. Do you understand? Fulgrim nodded and swallowed a mouthful of blood. I understand, brother, he said, and his voice gargled in mangled mockery of its once perfect cadence. I understand that you humble me and expect me to swallow my pride, to be your lapdog. I don't need a damn lapdog, snarled Perturabo. I need an equal. But I'm not your equal, brother, said Fulgrim, grinning through his bloodied features, as though this outburst of violence was somehow amusing. I surpass you in every way. And yet I am the one holding the hammer.
That's a fun little read. So that's from when they go on a lifestyle adventure into the Eye of Terror together.
This excerpt was from Angel Exterminatus, for those that were curious, one of the Horus Heresy books. So,
yeah, very cool. Cool. Well, yeah, we're going to learn all about that in the next episode, so it should be pretty cool. But that's all for this one, episode 150. What a time. Perturabo, Origins, and Great Crusade. We did it. Let's close out the show real quick. If you want to go buy your own Perturabo miniature, maybe you like Fulgrim more. Maybe you just want to buy whatever Warhammer, Lord of the Rings, or any type of thing. Go to Merlin Miniatures and use promo code Lorehammer. And they ship worldwide. If you join their mailing list, you can get 15% off. They got like 20,000 different items in their shop, so go check them out. They got a bunch of cool stuff going on there, so go check out Merlin Miniatures And if you buy something, use promo code Lorehammer, and that'll help out everyone involved. Like, if you don't want to join the Patreon because you're saving those dollars for minis, like I said, just use Merlin Miniatures. Then no harm, no foul. Promo code Lorehammer. Also, come check out the Lorehammer Listen to Lore podcast. If you have homebrew lore that you want read off, you can email lorehammerpodcast@gmail.com, and eventually I'll get around to reading it on Lorehammer Listen to Lore podcast.
And if you want to hear some more of my dulcet tones, come on over to the Grimlore podcast, where my co-host Ray and I talk about Warhammer Fantasy, a little bit of Age of Sigmar, and then whatever Grey Mandor Dark settings we want to talk about. Our most recent episode, we actually delved into Fallout, so enjoy.
Oh, cool.
So have yourself a listen. It's a lot of fun chicanery was to be had.
And we got a couple new Patreon members. We got DFC. We got Seth, who just called in, and we got Mike. Thank you guys all so much for joining the Patreon. If you ever want to join, there's links in the description below. And I guess we'll leave it at that. Stay tuned for the next episode and see what happens to Perturabo. Thanks, guys, for making it.
Can I get a good old iron within, iron without?
Can I say it backward?
You can try.
Do it. Iron without, iron within. Fulgrim approved.
Vote now. What do you prefer? All right, adios, everyone.